Fall. Chapter 1. My fragile rowing shell was moving fast and light down the river. It surged forward, then coasted while I recoiled for another stroke. I felt the pull of the sculls in my legs, then in my back. I heard only the splashing and the zing of the water dripping from the blades as I slipped by the ancient school. The endless lawns to starboard turned into soccer fields, and then into the practice football field. The freshly painted goalposts marked the end of my practice session, and passing them, I tasted my speed, closed my eyes, and inhaled it, the vibrations of the boat in my spine. I leaned back, and the shell ran out beneath me, gliding over the water like a bird. A million trees up, the mountain threw rippled reflections across the water. The blades of my sculls kissed the smooth surface as I neared the Fenton School boathouse. I could turn and see the dock, floating 4 inches above the waterline. Even this late in the season, I could feel the heat rising up off the banks, as if the valley had kept a part of summer's warmth for the fall. I hunched over and drew a stopwatch from my sweatshirt and did the daily math, looking at the digital numbers through watery eyes. The calculations were easy. I knew how far 2,000 meters was down the course, and I allowed some time because you rode with the current to get down the river and fought it coming back. I was shaving off seconds, all right. I had a notebook stowed under the foot stretchers, and I pulled it out after I slid off the boat's sliding seat onto the dock. I flattened the pages on my damp thighs to pencil in my new times, saw the improvement, and shut the book fast, slid it in the waistband of my rowing trunks. I flipped the scull out of the water to my shoulders, then settled it on my head and waited while it dripped, balancing, my body the fulcrum, as the boat gently teeter-tottered against my scalp. Holding the boat steady with my left hand wrapped around a rigger, I bent my knees and picked up the sculls with my right, straightened, and began the careful walk up to the boathouse. When I had negotiated the 57 steps to the dark entrance, I aimed the bow into the straps hanging from the rafters within, then strapped in the stern. I popped open the deck plate and used a crusty, grease-stained towel to wipe the river water from the hull. I pulled the ropes that raised the boat to where it settled into a sliver of reflection in the gloom and tied up, still a little out of breath. I set the sculls upright in their wooden rack and pulled the great sliding doors shut. As I steamed my way through the clear, early morning cold of fall toward the school, my knees would start to ache by the time I reached the first buildings. The muscles in my back would tighten, and my fingers would begin to burn. It didn't matter because, thinking about the times in that notebook, I believed I had an edge. Fenton was one of the few high schools in the country specifically planned to be a rowing school. As I made my way from the boathouse toward the neo-Gothic school buildings, I could see the dark trees and deep green autumn grass beside the water. Although the river ran slow here, its current was still stronger than anything I had experienced in the Black Rock Canal in Nickel City, where I grew up and where I learned the sport. The magnificent schoolhouse overlooked the section of river we raced upon. The Fenton School's founder had been a coxswain at Yale. Ignorant of, or more likely indifferent to, the muddy slog required to sink foundations in such soft valley soil, he had insisted that the school have this very vantage point beside the water. I can imagine my father walking along these old buildings thinking about this, toying with the idea of putting in a bid himself to drive down the reinforced rods you used to keep old piles like these standing. Busted-out buildings had kept him employed for 20 years in Nickel City, a place where they hadn't replaced the museums and reform schools and prisons for a century and a half. My father still employed stonemasons, skilled second-generation Italians and Brazilians who brought their wives cold fettuccine and feijoada to the sites we worked. After a quick shower and change, I hustled myself through the bright morning sun, my abraded hands held down, stiff and away from my body. The oar handles had torn into my palms, as usual, and I could feel the blisters forming. As I joined the throngs of students already on their way to breakfast,